I was so happy to say yes to him. To let him take me into his world, and show how he lived. Then he took me back to his place, and killed me. First story. I am a sensitive. I can feel and sometimes see things that normal people don't feel or see since childhood. My grandmother said it's because of my lineage. My mother's side of the family had its roots from Siquijor, an island in the Philippines known for witchcraft, alternative healers and everything about paranormal activities. My grandma came from a long line of healers, or should I say, witches. She is pretty in touch with creatures beyond us, and it seems like my brother and I got this trait from her. She tells us it's a gift, that we should not be scared because God is more powerful, but living and seeing things that no one else can see is hard. I almost thought I'm going crazy. But, let's stop about that and go to my story. This story happened back in the 90s when I was still around 5 or 6 years old. That time, I was staying with my parents in a far-flung city in the south in my dad's ancestral house. Both my parents are engineers and they both work, so most of the time I was left alone with my grandma. The house is a relatively old house. It's a 2-story house with a long staircase. One time Grandma had to do some laundry, so she left me alone on the 2nd floor. It's nothing but ordinary since I'm actually the kind of kid who can stay in one place and just read for hours. It was late afternoon that day, almost 6 p.m. I was busy reading while a few feet away from the staircase. From my position, the staircase is in my line of vision. Suddenly, I felt like someone is watching me. I looked down the staircase, and I saw this lady in the stair landing. She's wearing this long red dress. Her hair is short, almost pixie cut although a little bit disheveled. I can't clearly see her face but she seemed smirking. At that time, I still haven't realized that I can see things, so I thought she was a friend of my parents, since my parents know a lot of people who often visit us. So I talked to her. I said, "Who are you looking for? Mom is still on her way home." She did not answer, so I shrugged, and told her to come in so she can rest. I then turned to my books again, maybe just for around 15 seconds. When I looked up, the lady's face is just an inch away from me. I don't know how or why, but the next thing I know, she's inches away from me, with those bloodshot eyes. I got so scared that I dropped everything, and got an asthma attack right then, and passed out. The next thing I know, I'm in a hospital. I asked Grandma about the lady, but she said there's no one aside from the two of us at home that day. I still don't know who that lady is, but until now, I'm still scared of seeing her again. We moved houses and the last thing I know, the land was sold and the old house was brought down. Second story. The morning after my death, Dean woke up, stretched and yawned. Scratched his back and rolled out of the bed, oblivious to me standing over my dead body in the corner of the room where he left it, strangled and tossed aside. He cast a glance in my direction and frowned. Like he was looking at a full trash bag that he'd have to take out. Fury burned in my chest, a white heat that consumed my mind. I screamed obscenities at him, cursing him in every language that I knew, but he didn't hear me. He just walked over into the bathroom. The start of a regular day for him. I followed him into the bathroom and watched him start to shave, rubbing the razor blade up and down his chin, then down to his neck. I stood beside him and continued screaming, my arms flailing in all directions, and then jabbed at his outsticking elbow with my palm. My palm went right through his arm, like a fish through water, with the slightest of resistance, but that was enough. His arm jerked and the razor nicked him, right below his chin. A sliver of blood rolled down his neck. Dean grunted and pressed tissue onto the wound. I shut up and admired my handiwork. I'd hurt him. It took a wealth of concentration and the wound was small, but I'd hurt him. A small victory. Tiny. But a victory all the same. Dean went back into the bedroom and assessed my naked body on the ground, the dress that I'd worn on the floor beside it, right where it had landed when I let him take it off me. I'd been so foolish, letting him guide the conversation on our date, coaxing me into telling me everything about him while he told me nothing about himself. Typical sociopathic tendencies, and I had been so blind to them. Dean picked my body up and slung it over his shoulder, carried out of the bedroom. I followed him out and down the stairs to the kitchen. He opened a door to the cellar and carried me down the wooden steps. At the bottom was a heavy steel door set into the wall. Dean pulled the handle open and a blast of cold air came out with a hiss. No longer bothered with carrying me, Dean grabbed my foot and dragged me into the refrigerated room, with rows of foot-by-foot doors on the far wall. It looked like just a cold room at a mortuary. He pulled open one of the doors and tray pulled out, 6 feet length. Perfect size for a body. My body, which he laid out on the tray and pushed back into the wall. My final resting place. My spirit refused to move on, stuck in the home of that murderer forever. I was still there when he brought home his next victim. A young girl who looked a lot like me. Same height as me, same eye color, same smile. He even killed her the same way that he killed me, lured her into his bed, laid her down, and just when she thought that the night would turn magical, he clenched his hands around her throat and squeezed until her chest stopped heaving. I screamed and shouted while it happened, trying to warn the girls somehow, all for nothing. They couldn't hear me. And they never would. Third story. Mostly, trying to understand my experiences in my own home growing up. It's been 6 years since I stepped foot in that house, and the hair on my neck still stands up when I think about what I experienced. My story takes place in New Orleans. When I was 13 years old, my dad fell in love, and married my stepmother. It was almost like an answer to my prayers. Not only was he happy again, but we couldn't have asked for a better stepmother. She lived in New Orleans, and being closer to my dad's work, he moved in with her. About a year after they got married, she wanted to have a child of her own. They found a beautiful old New Orleans-style home for our growing family. The entire upstairs was basically for me, my sister and my brother. The upstairs had 3 bedrooms, a bathroom and a living room. We had our own space and loved it. Shortly after moving in, it became our nightmare. We only stayed at my dad's every other weekend, so it took us a while to realize something wasn't right with this house. It started off as a very negative feeling whenever we would go upstairs. As soon as we'd reach the top of the staircase, the hair on our necks stood up, and we had a feeling of being watched. The feeling was so terrifying it's almost impossible to describe. We would have friends come stay the weekend on a regular basis, and they refused to go upstairs alone. I actually had a friend wet herself at night because she was too afraid to get up and go to the bathroom by herself. My little sister always slept in my bedroom because she was too scared to sleep. After laying in bed a few hours, I could feel my sister moving in the bed. When I turned to look at her, she was sitting straight up staring at the wall. When I said her name, she wouldn't respond. It was like she was in a trance, and there was no coming out of it. Although it only lasted a few minutes, it felt like hours. When she laid back down, it was like in slow motion, and as soon as her head hit the pillow, I heard banging coming from inside my closet. It sounded as if someone was trying to get out, but couldn't. When I asked her about it the next day, she didn't remember anything. I was so terrified from that experience I moved my dresser in front of my closet door. I guess it made me feel better knowing nothing could get out. Just a few weeks after that incident, my sister was sitting at my vanity, doing her makeup. I had 2 doors in my bedroom. One leading to the living room, and one leading to the hall. The door leading to the hall also led to our attic. As she was doing her makeup, she was telling me how scared she was to be in the house. She hated being upstairs, and told me she thought it was haunted. Being the older, protective sister, I told her she had nothing to worry about and there is no such thing as ghosts. As soon as I said that, the door handle on the attic door started shaking, and the door flew open. I don't think we've ever ran that fast in our entire lives. My brother had an experience in my room. He lived with my dad, and one weekend while we were at our mom's, he heard my sound machine in my bedroom. He walked in my room to turn it off, but it was unplugged, and had no batteries in it. He said he left the house, and when he came back later it had turned off. After all of these scary incidents, we started sleeping downstairs on the couch bed. We never had a scary feeling downstairs, but early in the mornings as the sun was rising, we would wake up to what sounded like someone running up and down the upstairs hall. It happened on a regular basis, but we could never come up with an explanation for the noise. A lot happened in this house, but these were the most terrifying experiences, and I will never forget them. My dad and stepmom always denied having a scary experience in that house. I guess they wanted us to feel comfortable, and didn't want us to be more afraid knowing that they were having like incidents too. When they moved, they finally admitted that they thought the house was haunted. They had a few experiences, but nothing like we had. The activity seemed to happen upstairs, and they rarely went up there. They did tell us after they moved that the previous owners were an older couple, and they both died in the house. Nothing traumatic, they were elderly and sick, so it was just their time. They did have a special needs child that died at a young age in the house. From what we know, they built the house when they started a family, so we were only the second owners. This is the first time I've written it down, and it actually helps to get it off my chest.